Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born.
Where the young at heart relive the fun. Join us every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, only on WESN, the content capital.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
No, I just want a man. Any man. 1 foot, 1 hand, 12 toes.
Trinidad and Tobago, the trial of the century is back. And you are the jury. After sold-out performances in the UK and Trinidad, Focus Arts Promotions is back in TNT with the explosive, hilarious, and thought-provoking stage play by Alan Charles. Why Didn't I Get Married? It's not good for man to be alone, but what about the women? In Trinidad, Central Bank, Port of Spain, Saturday 12 September, 7 p.m. and Sunday 13 September at 6 p.m. Tickets $225. Available at A&A Pharmacy, Port of Spain, Living Legacy Arima, Maranatha in Sando. For more info, call 768-8214. And for the first time at the Shore Park Complex in Tobago, the day before the holiday, Wednesday 23rd August, 7 p.m. Tickets $200. Available at the Gentleman Barber Spa, Coconut Cafe, and Pablo Supermarket. For more info in Tobago, call 320-2249. Why Didn't I Get Married? 7 women, 1 lawsuit. Man shortage in the church? Let the bacchanal begin.
WESN.
Good morning, welcome to Talking Point. It's not every day. I was literally going back and forth with how I want to start the show this morning, start of the week. I had a little funny story that isn't really relevant. I might still say it for whatever it's worth after, but before I say anything, I just want to acknowledge the passing of someone I know in Tobago, Ravi Silochan. I have known of him and been acquainted with him on some level for, I don't know, 20 years. You know, it's just someone who you would run into from time to time. And not this year, but last year when I was in Tobago, you know, he was doing some work for me, helping me out of a tight spot. And in the news now, we see his passing, and unless I'm mixing up people, maybe I am. I hope I am, I guess, which is a horrible thing to say. Regardless, I guess, it's one of those things when, you know, there's quite a fair share amount of murder, but the reports are, or the suspicion is that he may have been impaired and near the ocean, and things happen. We already inflicting enough harm on ourselves by our inability to be a peaceful society. But this is just another incident where the person I may know the person, and you're left wondering how avoidable this was. You know? I think the first time I ever had a thought like this was when I heard of the passing of a former coworker. And it's very weird for me to get through the normal behavior of my day, to feel normal, to enjoy things normally, to do things I would normally want to do. Now, on some level, it's silly because I can't do anything about the situation one way or the other. All I could do is continue on with life. And it's weird, especially when it's someone who isn't that close to you. Because then how do you mourn someone on that level? What is expected of you as a basic human emotionally? And if it was a family member that you were close to, a friend, obviously, you know, it's a devastating moment and it will take up a significant amount of time. But what about if it's just someone who you know? And then I guess on some level now, it just depends on how we respond to these kind of things as normal human beings. One of the interesting things to watch the older generation is those who could take it in stride. Because I'm sure there might be many listeners who have multiple friends who've passed away. I myself have had a handful of friends who've passed away. Ironically, some at least one when I was in my early 20s, accidentally. 2 for health reasons in the last 15 years from the same friend group. Yeah, it's just a weird, it's just a weird spot. It's just a weird spot. Because I guess on some level, this is life, unfortunately. You could either be one of the first to go or one of the people that has to survive the loss of everyone until you're alone. And that's a hard thing. And I guess that is one issue with the loss of the village, the rhetorical village, the community. You know, on some level, because part of the beauty of the village, you didn't have to have grandchildren to have grandchildren. You didn't have to have nieces and nephews to have nieces and nephews, to have young people still be in and around your life. You couldn't necessarily run away from some degree of responsibility because the village had children. And on some level, there were children to keep you company. We had 2 aunts that lived with us until they passed away, and on some level, they weren't immediate family. It wasn't parents, grandparents, siblings, or parents, siblings, but they were still relatives, yes. And they were able to not be alone, I guess, as they got older, despite not having children of their own. And I do wonder, we're in a weird spot, right? Maybe the internet is replacing a lot of human social activity. That could be a good thing and a bad thing. That's one of the odd things about life. But I guess even with all of the newfangled technology and the capacity to be a hermit inside the house and not see another human soul, if you so choose to, I will still, even for acquaintances, feel a certain way when I see that one of them might have passed. Now, it's a warm morning I was going to make a joke about it, but it's still an observation. Really warm morning. I'm almost dying in here in the studio as the AC is now kicking in. I did not pick the best shirt for morning this warm. One of the things that I think surprises us that is always heated, and perhaps, you know, the heavy hot sun has something to do with it. Perhaps that causes us to be a little bit more, or rather less tolerant or tolerable. But another stakeholder is, this is the National Council of Indian Culture, are calling on politicians and the media to stop using race, religion, and culture to divide TNT. Although I am under the impression that they are specifically speaking about politicians. Because, just on an aside, I think the media's responsibility or role is not necessarily, in most cases, looking to push any kind of agenda, but rather it is just the catch-22. If I report it, if I speak on it, now speaking about me myself, but if the media reports it, we are advancing whatever that message is. We are distributing it. If we don't speak about it, we are covering it up. It is not so easy to know what is editorially correct in certain controversial moments or issues. With regards to politicians, it's different. But I'll say this to the NCIC, because this is the, let me just make sure, the president, this is a quote from him. Within recent times, I have noticed some politicians have chosen to stimulate division rather than unity because they believe separation will save their best political interests. Sadly, it will not work. I hate to say this, but on some level it does work. He goes on to say, they encourage citizens to see one another as opponents rather than fellow citizens. That approach may produce temporary political advantage, but it weakens the nation. That is correct. It doesn't work in that respect. In the long run, it does not make the country better off. That doesn't mean that it cannot advance whatever individual political agenda that politician may or may not have in the moment. And the long-term welfare of the state, of the country, of the population, that technically has no bearing once it is not a situation where blame could be attributed to him or her. That technically has no bearing on their political agenda whatsoever. Using anything to divide up a population will have multiple objectives. But I think one of the main things, it doesn't really always help you to win elections and to achieve power. What it does is it galvanizes your base. And it makes it difficult for your political opponents to gain any inroads on your turf. And it helps strengthens your defenses. It convinces your supporters to continue to follow you, no matter how much nonsense you do. But more importantly, it is speaking to the mindset of some in this country. Now we have to ask ourselves, because we are of the assumption that diversity is beautiful and everybody wants to come together and sing kumbaya because it's a natural state of being, when the reality is that is far from the truth. It is not natural for every single person in a given large enough sample size to want to be opening and welcoming to every and all people. There are several reasons why. We do discriminate against the homeless. Obviously, most of us do not let them into our home. Now, add on anybody that might have a drug issue or known violent tendencies, that's a given. That is also technically, we discriminate them when interacting with them versus the rest of the population. We find a thing to say, no, you are separate. We all kind of do it. The motivations are different, but we all kind of do it. Strangers, generally, we're going to welcome in certain ways, but not necessarily welcome in other ways. We're going to do certain things for, but not necessarily do other things for. But then what happens is, natural human behavior is to identify with someone that looks like yourself, because the assumption emotionally, internally, subconsciously is, this person is similar to me. They should have similar life experiences. They should have similar disadvantages. They should have similar perspectives. They should understand where I'm coming from. They should agree with everything I say. They should basically be the home that I may or may not be looking for. And then that's why when you have people with very strong opinions on their group versus the other group, particularly about things like race, where you so want to identify with someone that looks like you, on the assumption that they're the ones who will understand you the best. When they run into someone that looks like them, that doesn't agree with them on certain strong issues, it's a big emotional problem. And what happens is people interject differences of race in politics. People do that. Now, to what extent are the politicians fanning the flames or riding the wave? This is something that I find interesting. When you look at certain parts of politics on the internet, not all of it, but some of it, you could get some very ugly statements, right? Where you will have racist attacks mixed in with someone speaking about the political party of the other side. Whichever direction you want to take. I don't know if that is really something that comes from the politicians, right? And both parties really try hard to look diverse. And then both parties, of course, now will want to say, well, you see, when you treat the racial minority in our party badly, you're like hypocrites. When the reality is, if you looked at your supporters and what your supporters said of the race that just happens to be the same race of your minority members, because when you see the comments doesn't say the other race so-and-so, blah, 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 but the ones that wear our colors are just magically fine. No, they don't put that disclaimer. And the thing is, these are strong emotions. It is very difficult to convince anyone to change their mind. Right? Believe it or not, debating based off of factual evidence and logic is actually very difficult. It is very difficult to convince the common man based on evidence, right? In a lot of instances, they are wrong. And you see it because I am sure, this is an example. Whatever side your politics is, look at the side you disagree with, and then ask yourself, how crazy do you think those people are? Because I guarantee you, whether you're talking about local politics or, say, international politics in America, UK, or whatever, when it's local politics, it would be UNCPNM. When it's outside of TNT, it would be some version of conservatives or liberals. Republican, Democrat, I think it's what, Tory or Labour or what have you. And do you look at one side and think they're sane and the other side is crazy? Because here's the trick. Both sides do that. And here's the other trick. If you actually read what is written, listen to what is said, there are important, pertinent, relevant, technically correct points on both sides of normal conservatism and liberalism. But generally speaking, everyone has been convinced that the other side has gone crazy and is extreme. Because I have seen those who rallied against extreme leftist politics themselves start to use careless statements and rhetoric that is starting to go down, whether they know it or not, that rabbit hole. This is mostly on the internet with regards to various media personalities and analysts. And the thing is, once you start to identify the other side as crazy, how are you going to be convinced to change your mind off of any point? That's the thing. If you're going to say they're crazy, they don't know what they're talking about, they're insane. Now, locally, it's not so much they're crazy. Locally, it's they're corrupt, they're racist, we're magically not racist, we're magically not corrupt. All of the negative things, we are definitely not. They are all the negative things. All the negative things are them. But you don't actually do anything with regards to your own mistakes. You sweep your own mistakes under the rug. You protect your own people. Well, you can't really convince people who are so entrenched in the fact that their side is right and the other side is wrong. And some of that comes from the strong emotions that you get from those who, whether due to ignorance or outright malice, are racist. Mixed into that will be that racism, that strong emotional underpinning, which even for those who are ignorant, right, there are those who are racist not because they hate so much, but because they really don't know. And they listen to the rhetoric and they don't know better. They really don't. I think there was a jazz player, had a former, I can't remember the jazz player's name, had a former KKK member basically come and confess his sins to this jazz player. Because to this now former member of the KKK, he was like, look, anybody that could play the blues this good has to be all right. And that was the emotional trigger to get him to start to rethink his assumptions. There's some other, yes, it is a jazz player, and he might have like a trophy case of robes in all various colors. But the main ones are like the high-ranking members of the KKK who give him their robes, like, you know, like when you stuff a boar's head and put it on your wall. This is his trophy case of KKK scalps. And the thing is, he was always willing to engage and speak with them. And the key point is, once they got to know him, this black musician that plays really well, and they got to know him, and then they started to realize, oh, the hate I have is just out of sheer ignorance, because I have no idea what a black person is like. I might know what a criminal might be that broke into my house, but that does not speak to an entire race. I have not actually tried to experience the people, who they are, what they are like. So you have that in Trinidad where you have communities. Maybe it's not as easy now. There's more integration now. But still, you have that in various areas that are seen to be of this one ethnicity, right? And that ignorance will go far. Because when you're one ethnicity and you identify, this is who we are, this is how we live, and you don't want any interlopers, Because the problem is people don't necessarily always like change. This is why the ignorance could withstand. You think, oh no, be welcoming, whatever, whatever. Not everybody has the self-confidence, the self-respect, the strength of character to be open to new. Because most communities don't want a wholesale change, right? But when you have new people from new backgrounds and they might or might not have or be of different races, some communities might look at that and see, oh, the other. I remember when the child, long time ago, a couple of years ago, or maybe 3-4 years, well, there was a child that passed away. It ran off. I was wandering the streets. A new community saw the child, but could not catch up to the child before the child died. Because I can't remember, there was some physical ailment I think she had. She physically just could not, it wasn't as though she saw the child right here and could have just grabbed him. I believe she saw the child in the distance and tried to catch up to the child, and despite being an adult, she didn't have the physical capacity to do so. And one of the things that came out of that was, and I believe this is someone of the same race, she was other. She was not of the community. She was an outsider. You could have those sentiments for someone regardless of whether they share race with you or not. So then, now, just imagine what it's like when it's a different race. So you have those that hate, they want to hate. And you have those that follow along with it because they don't know any better. Because they haven't allowed themselves to critically think through the situation. Why do I believe the things that I do? What do I actually know about these people? Why do I think they're bad? What evidence do I actually have to spew this nonsense out? And those strong emotions could carry a movement very easily. Very easily. Because part of it is, and this is the other thing, one, you do it to fortify your base. They're the other. So you will never cross, you will never betray, you won't disagree with, you will always look at them and say they're wrong, we're always right. We deserve, we expect, we demand your loyalty because we're of the same race, we're of the same people. And they're not of us. They're not like us, so you need to never show them loyalty or favor. But then also, it makes it easier to point fingers. Why is the country so bad? Because they did it. They are the reason why the country is so bad. You see, what most politicians will do is, when you're in our situation, whether this is intentional or not, this is the effect. The UNC will say it's the PNM's fault. The PNM will say it's the UNC's fault. But underneath the surface, most of the politicians won't actually say this. But the interpretation by a lot of the very specific members of the base or members in the party who are not given prominent roles for good reason, for this very reason in some cases, they will go further. They won't just say the party, they will say the stereotypical race associated with the party. And when you read the comments, that's what you'll see. That's why you see things like, it's we time now. Because I didn't realize that your time as a what? As a member of the UNC or as an East Indian trumped one's national identity. That's what you see with regards to some of the rhetoric from the wearers of red. Because now they're gonna look at not just what the government is doing, but more importantly, the association of the followers who are saying more extreme things. And they're saying, you see how they are? You see how they are? They, and lump an entire ethnic group into the same bucket because of the statements of a minority on the internet, because it's essentially a minority. It's not like every East Indian and Afro-Trinbagonian wants to spew this nonsense. But on any given political video or post, you obviously are not going to have a million comments from every voting age citizen to read through to form a consensus. You're going to get the ones who are most motivated to speak out, who, for the most part, believe they don't care what they say out into the public sphere. And for all of the government's concerns about what is said publicly and blah, 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 in both administrations, I have yet to see any consideration to curtail excessive political speak and rhetoric and racist remarks on political posts and videos, a lot of which are published by either the government or the opposition in official capacity or as the party, in official government capacity or official party capacity. Don't really see anybody trying to police that. So you point fingers, who to blame? And you see it works very well, especially when you're not in power. Right? So that's what the UNC basically did. To be fair, they kind of pump brakes on that for the election a little bit. I will say this, give credit, they had a campaign that was not just predicated on negativity. But for the most part, before and after the campaign, it's pointing fingers. And just wait, just wait. The strongest tool in the opposition's hands will be blame the government, blame the government, blame the government. That's going to be the strongest tool. It's not about how much better we are. It's not about what we could do better. It will be blame them, they're bad, so we're just better by default. And this can go far. How far do you say? Well, there was a failed artist that was a minor foot soldier in World War I that saw what happened to Germany and basically blamed that entire race for it and successfully was able to parlay that into turning a country that was devastated by World War I into potentially the most powerful military force in the 1930s and early 1940s. Because that's basically Hitler's shtick. Blame them. Blame them, we get rid of them, we solve all the problems. That was it. And ironically, the political messaging and ignorance was so strong, I don't know if, I'll never know. But basically, they followed up with it. They didn't just use it for rhetoric. They didn't just take advantage of sentiments, negative sentiments, to point fingers at an ethnic group to get into power, and that was the end of it. No. And what you need to understand is the vast majority of Germans weren't Nazis. The problem is there was a combination of ignorance, and then because things went too far too fast, as people started to figure it out, it was too late. Because they were emergency powers. Because secret police could have taken you whenever, wherever. Sympathizers were not allowed. Because now everyone had to be afraid for their own physical safety. And they didn't have the capacity to consider the safety of others, of Jews or gays. And if there was a black population in Germany, any non-white population, to be honest, they didn't have time for that. Because they themselves were being oppressed. Because things went too far, too fast. And we don't like to think we will be the ones to risk it all and to save the persecuted who were being massacred. We would be the ones to go against the system and to stand up. No, we won't. The vast majority of us, and I say us because I can't even say for myself what I would do. We've never experienced anything like that before, where you could be killed for standing up for someone else's rights. There's no judge and jury required here with this. Because that's how far racism can go. And on some level, you see other examples of it across the globe. And you might think, oh yes, America is so bad. No. No, 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 no. America, that is civil society in comparison to certain parts of Eurasia and Africa and Latin America. No, 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 no. This is why one of the issues I have with any Trinbagonian that wants to champion a cause, oh my gosh, did you see what's happening here? And did you see what's happening there? When have we ever been concerned about what's happening in Africa? Where one could argue the brutality in certain time periods and locations is just as bad, if not worse. You know why? Why we don't speak out about certain ethnic cleansing situations in Africa? Because it doesn't get the international press. That's basically it. That's why I don't fall for the emotional arguments of what is morally right or not. Because we don't actually monitor the world and have a principled stand that we apply across the board. We go with what's easier or what's easy. On some level, it's easy. They present a case to us on a platter. It tugs at our emotional heartstrings. We say, yes, we agree, and we move on with our day. We don't actually do anything about it. That's the point. It is that mentality that's essentially why, if we were Germans in Nazi Germany, we would have conformed, shut our mouths, keeps our heads down, and hope that we survive the whole thing at the end. Well, the young men, like, well, maybe I'm not so young anymore, but if I was a young man, if I was in my 20s, you know, we would probably been dead in the war, to be honest. The old men, actually, men my age probably would have been dead in the war as well. Because in the end, it was children and old men who were being put in ad hoc units to go to the front line. That's how bad it got. That's how bad the political fervor got. That's how effective the strategy was of cementing your support when no one wants to go against you. And then you're blaming someone else. That's the cause of all your problems. That's the source of everything wrong with your society. And at some point, no one wants to say that the emperor's wearing no clothes. No one wants to admit the truth because we're so caught up in this thing, this machine, that they've lost control of. You just have to ride it out and hope that the descent does not ruin you. Somehow Germany was able to survive in no small part due to the generosity of the Allies that rebuilt the country and then in 1989 or 1991 allowed reunification of East and West Germany. But it's an extreme example, but it is one where, unlike many other Caribbean countries, we are multicultural. And one of the mistakes it's easy to say that diversity is a strength. The problem is it overlooks the fact that diversity is not easy. Because at the end of the day, there will always be someone, humanity will always breed someone that wants to take advantage of something. And if there is an exploit to be had, utilizing any kind of racial tensions, racial divisions, or basic simple racial differences as a starting point. Someone will try to do it. Not everybody has proper morals. And while you might think, oh, what happened to Nazi Germany can't happen here. Technically, it's not impossible. It's unlikely, but the problem is if you merely assume it's unlikely to happen, and you don't actually pay attention, and you don't actually show the appropriate level of concern, and you don't actually stand up for things when you have the capacity to do so, there might come a day when it's too late. There might. It's going to be insidious. It's going to happen very slowly. It's going to require a lot of different things to fall into place. But you're not always going to be able to recognize those things when they fall into place. All the ducks have to line up in a perfect row. But that's what happened in Germany. The Nazis were never politically a powerhouse. They only rose to power because democracy was a difficult situation, because again, there were a diversity of views, a diversity of agendas, a diversity of perspectives, a diversity of priorities. So they couldn't form a democratically elected government easily. So the compromise was to give this smaller party a chance at the chancellorship. And we all saw how that happened when you weren't necessarily careful with who you choose. When all of the right factors are in place to allow for something crazy to happen. Don't forget, Germany was basically surrounded essentially by democratic nations. Now granted, we're small compared to most of our neighbors. But one of the interesting things now in 2026 is this whole desire to respect sovereignty. Well, respect their sovereignty, let them sort it out. So if people might think, nah, that can't happen, the international community will never let it happen. No, according to the philosophy of some, this is an internal thing. If anything goes wrong internally here, we have to sort it out ourselves, apparently. Again, it all depends on how things line up. What kind of ducks in a row do you have? And there'll be a perfect set of circumstances, or you could say it's imperfect because of the potential outcome, but perfect in the sense of it allows some extreme scenario that normally would be impossible to now be possible. Not just be possible, but to play itself out. And I'm not saying that anybody, whether red or yellow, is there alongside that madman. But what I am saying is those kinds of sentiments, you start small and you work the way up. Because anti-Jewish sentiments is nothing new. It was invented by Nazi Germany. It was just exploited. In fact, right now, racial tension effectively is what's being exploited in the Middle East when you get down to it, really. Why are we going to assume that it cannot get worse here? The key factor is not how much hate is in our hearts, because we believe we're a loving people, right? No, the key factor is how much complacency is in our souls. Because it doesn't matter what we believe and what our morals are, if we are not always willing to stand up for them. So the fact of the matter is, we have a situation where elements of our society essentially are being racist. Whether it is disingenuous, they're not actually racist, they're just using it as a tool, whether it is actual hatred and malice in their hearts, or whether it is ignorance, and they fear the unknown and they fear the other. Fact of the matter is, it does exist. We've spoken about it on the show, people speak about it in the newspapers, people speak about it on the radio, other TV shows, the politicians and all speak about it, which is hilarious when you think about the technical hypocrisy, because some of their own supporters are some of the biggest culprits. But the fact of the matter is, it exists. Now, one of the reasons why we do nothing about it is, are we willing to admit to ourselves that it exists? everyone is entitled to their opinion. And this is why democracy now is an advanced form of human citizenship that is not easy, that you can't just phone in your democracy card, you know, and be non-committal and sit on the fence. Because there is that principle that everyone is there entitled to opinion. And when do you start saying some opinions are better than others and some opinions are less worthy? How do you make that determination? How do you make that judgment? Because an attempt to deal with racism could go horribly wrong and have unintended consequences down the road when you over-course correct, when you try to balance the scales, but the pendulum swings too far the other way. It can happen. It's not just about finding the easy answer. This is bad, so we just wipe it out. No, it's about finding the sustainable answer. And that usually means putting in work and effort on a repeated, regular basis. It's not about just condemning people who are racist and banning them from society and casting them out as exiles. No. To me, it basically comes down to one key concept. How do we move on from making what separates us, what makes us different, that important? Because you don't need to be of a different race to have a different perspective, right? You don't need to tie multiple perspectives to multiple racial backgrounds. That is an easy way to start off, but it's not necessarily the only way. I'll always appreciate what Morgan Freeman said best. Don't talk about it. Don't bring it up. It's not important. The problem is we kind of do that, but in the wrong way. We allow it to happen. But there's supposed to come a day when we don't look at each other by skin color and then have a set of assumptions about who this person is and what they're like and what their behavior is like and what their professionalism is like and their intelligence is like and their manners are like and whatever else. That's the problem. That's what you do. Oh, this person is this, so you all these stereotypes comes in for, as opposed to, why don't I experience this person first? And then if they are discourteous, it's because they are discourteous, not because I made an assumption. Race is not supposed to be a thing. But as is pointed out, are we going to ever see a black person leading the UNC and an Indian person leading the PNM? I don't know if I'll ever see it in my lifetime. I honestly don't. Especially when they try to use race for some kind of political advantage. You know, the thought is Stuart Young is Chinese. He should be more welcoming or more appealing to a wider demographic base. That's how you do the calculations. Well, we need someone of this race on the platform, and that race on the platform, and we need a woman here, and a man there, and blah, 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 blah. And when you're caught up with the math like that, unfortunately, is it genuine? Is it that, oh, well, these are the best candidates, or is it that these are the best candidates that fit a formula so that we put up the best appearance in order to get the most support? That is not a formula for good governance. We get a young person that doesn't know anything about anything, doesn't know what they're talking about, but we want to appeal to young people, so we get a young person. So I say all that, then to come back, I mean, I've started making the point already. It's not just enough to call out the politicians. There has to be some consequence for it. And I don't mean cancel culture and shunning. There has to be mature, healthy ways to express displeasure that isn't vindictive and also exploitative in the sense of you now start to say, ooh, racism bad, because this is what happened in North American politics. They exploited racism. They did what the racists did to the racists. That's the source of all your problems. That ethnic group, that's racist. Blame them. Ironically, you end up being racist. That's one of the issues why we can't solve it. Because, as I said, the opinions are entrenched. The other race is racist. We're not racist. We're normal. We're the normal ones. We're the ones in the middle. Our views aren't extreme. Our views are all moderate. That's literally how people convince themselves of some incorrect moral superiority. Because they are right. And why can't everybody see how they are right? The other side is all wrong. And that essentially, if it's not tied to race, it's bigotry in another form. And it's a cycle. Bigotry will beget bigotry. So it's not just figure out a way to ban it, figure out a way to ostracize it, to condemn it, to cuss it out. It needs more than that. Educate the ones who are ignorant. And do not give a free pass to the ones who are truly hateful. But that's easier said than done. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we should have our media ambassador with us. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN. We'll be right back after this.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Your health matters, and the answers you need are just one conversation away. What's Up Doc is back for an exciting season 5, and we're bringing to you Trinidad and Tobago's leading medical professionals to discuss the issues that affect you and your family. From prevention and treatment to wellness and the latest medical technology, get trusted advice, ask your questions, and stay informed. We also have an exciting new addition to the What's Up Doc family, our very own fitness instructor, Elena, who will provide easy, practical exercises you can implement in your daily routine. So don't miss What's Up Doc, Season 5, only on WESN, the content capital. Because when it comes to your health, knowledge is the best medicine.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
I can't talk about the WSND Content Capital, and before I go any further, I was told that the deceased is not the person who I thought it was, but his brother. So technically, it was still someone who I was acquainted with on some level. Condolences to the family. I don't think I formally said that yet, but now we're going to switch gears a bit, and perhaps this is somewhat in a similar vein with regards to being cautious or putting the correct safety measures when dealing with public celebrations that have certain risks. Joining me to have this conversation, of course, is our media ambassador, Acting ASP Christopher Aroon. Thankfully, he's not in the field trying to, two jobs at the same time. Chris, morning. Welcome to Talking Points.
Hi, Sean. Good day. Thanks for having me. Good day to your viewers and your colleagues. So we wanted to speak to members of the public about the discharging of fireworks. Well, pre-Independence Day, and its application to other holidays. So there are boundaries within which the members of the public must operate during any public holiday, which allows for the discharge of fireworks, and it's permitted between the hours of 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on public holidays. On December 31st, which we all know as Old Year's Night, it's allowed between 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. on the 1st. Outside of that, members of the public would have to apply for a permit from the Commissioner of Police. It's a $100 fee to apply for the permit. It's non-refundable, and you make the application to the Commissioner of Police, and of course, via email or in person, or via the regular mail, and he would respond to your application.
This is for times outside of public holidays.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So you may have a function, a wedding, a religious event, and you want to discharge fireworks in a safe manner, in a safe place, and you can make an application to for the permit. And maybe outside the 8 to 5 as well. So let's say you're having for Independence Day, you want to discharge the fireworks around 11 p.m. I don't know the significance of that, but nonetheless, you would have to apply for a permit outside of that, outside the regular hours.
Now, one of the things is, regardless of whether you have a permit or it's the 8 to 9 period on most public holidays, scratch bombs, I'm reading here, it is still, I think it's in all caps, it's banned, and the consequences, the fine and the potential prison term, it is quite severe, and I'm not faulting for it in this case being quite severe.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go into it.
Well, I mean, scratch bombs have historically been very dangerous to children and other users, and it has caused a lot of harm. It has been used to affect the normal lives of persons. It does seem to be a big hindrance to persons operating their usual regime and going about their social events. It does seem to affect the elderly and children and animals a lot more than the regular fireworks, because it is being used at the ground level. And people tend to be a bit more, how to say, they tend to be a bit more callous with it in terms of throwing it at one another and that kind of thing. So it's been totally banned. Because as I say, we have had many reports and incidents which we have had to investigate, in which persons have been harmed, in bodily injury was caused.
Oh.
And we had no other choice but terrible. Yeah. And they've come out and they've totally banned it. I think the fine, Sean, you see the fine there?
Yeah, the fine is $20,000 or 10 years imprisonment. Which,
right. So based on what you're telling me, it seems to be an arrestable offense. Anything over 5 years, but the penalty is 5 years or more is an arrestable offense. So it is that you could be arrested by a police officer.
So one of the things is
for an offense.
There's also, with regards to the application, I'm now saying this, if you put false or misleading info on the application, because I would imagine some applications are denied, some are approved, there would be some sort of criteria with regards to when it is reasonable.
Yeah.
You live next to an old folks home, you live next to a hospital with a nursery, not appropriate.
Yeah, it wouldn't be approved, yeah.
And if you lie on your application, it would be a $50,000 fine and 2 years imprisonment.
Yeah. Yeah, so, because sometimes what persons tend to do is they would apply to have the event at a safe location.
Oh.
And unknowing, and then, you know, we find or we visit the location because we send police officers to visit the location. And when they visit, it's at the wrong location. So it's close to a school, it's close to, well, the restricted places will be a hospital, elderly home, parks, national parks, forested areas, farms. So then the officers detect that it's in the wrong place and they have no other choice but to shut it down and then fine the penalty, the fine, or the impose the fine or the fixed penalty notice for lying on the application.
I think this is key because I think most people would assume, how would they know? What are they going to do? Look for us and shut us down? And basically what they're saying is yes, they will.
Yeah, we will visit. And we would also visit beforehand too, to ensure that it's confirmed as per the application.
Oh, one of the things I guess is it's not very easy to find suitable locations because you can't do it out in the bush. You might cause a forest fire. You can't necessarily do it in certain suburban and urban areas. You might cause a building fire, right, and harm to people. So, you know, this is one of those things where don't be surprised if getting a permit is not so simple because there's probably a lot of locations. I think the last time we spoke about this, the one place I identified is, well, if you're able to shoot it out at sea and there are no boats around, I think that's something to be said. There are no boats. There's nothing in the line of wherever that firework is going. You know, you could maybe assume that's relatively safe, but outside of that, there's essentially just varying degrees of risks with regards to whether it's foliage or people or property, and you just need something to go wrong once and then you have a problem.
So we have to be careful for neighbors, for colleagues, I think some of the restrictions are zoos, farms.
Zoos, yes.
Elderly homes, registered elderly homes. Hopefully, most of them are registered. And we have to keep in mind that there are a number of elderly persons that don't live in homes, that live at home with their relatives. And you know, there are a lot of young children, babies just born, and it does affect them. There's nothing to really keep the noise away from them. And you know, we have to protect all our citizens at the same time. Hopefully people adhere to the rules and the regulations.
Somehow I never knew of this before with my nephews and my baby cousins and the like. A friend of mine, I might have mentioned this the last time we spoke about this topic. He basically had to rent a hotel apartment for, it could have been Independence or Old Years, just to get away from the fireworks, because his 1 year old could not deal with it. Like it was completely debilitating. I mean, now a few years later, it's different. But when the baby was less than a year or 1 year old, there was nothing that they could get, and it was not feasible to just have the child go through it You know, I'm not entirely sure about what the long-term effects could be, but for a child to be at that level of distress, right, where you can't alleviate the distress, you know, you cannot control the situation, it's just not good for the baby at all. And we kind of, I think, take it for granted when we just want to, well, what we celebrating is whatever, take your pick of holiday, right? But the problem is, you don't know who has a newborn, you know, right around the corner from you, if they do, if they don't. Same thing with the elderly. And that just, I mean, the whole thing with pets, of course, you have the pet advocates.
Pets,
I did see that firsthand. I had a dog that literally would scratch at a door until he bled. Trying to get inside. So if we were aware of what's going on, he injured himself regularly.
We had, I remember we had a few dogs, and we had to prepare a place for them on that staircase. There was a bit, it was blocked off, so we had to, we would line it with towels and pillows and whatnot. Their own pillows, dog pillows, and line it and have it comfortable for them to Sean, you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, sorry about that. On my end, everything seems to be delayed. So yeah, and it was heartbreaking to see how they reacted. You know, they would go wild, and so we would have to calm them down. And you know, it's unfair to members of the public, especially the elderly, who may not be able to do such things to keep their pets safe. You know, they unfortunately that's how it is, and it's a noisy. One day the trend evolves to the extent that, you know, we may utilize silent fireworks as opposed to, hopefully, you know, in the future we would see a lot more of those.
Well, one of the things.
Bear in mind, just communicate with the your nearest police station, and of course they would send across a patrol to ask or to instruct the persons who are utilizing the fireworks outside the restricted hours to stop it.
So one of the catches is in some cases the fireworks are already used. Unfortunately, you know, you can't unring the bell. One of the things I do find interesting is there are times, because Hollywood gives us a false impression of what gunshots sound like, and I do believe there are some minor devices that have the same kind of light pop
effect
that some guns are really a light pop. And one of the things I find interesting is, so when is it a gunshot and when is it some idiot playing with maybe a scratch bomb? I don't know, something similar to that. And is that, I mean, I would imagine that is technically an issue, because knowing people, somebody might have just gotten shot and we're just assuming, some idiot's playing with a firework. So, you know, and of course, if you're not sure, you can still call the police. We would respond. We would have patrols out to check on these events and these issues. One thing, Sean, you know, we haven't spoken about is children using fireworks. It's totally wrong to have these kids using fireworks. If anything happens to these kids, you would be charged or investigated for cruelty to a child, for exposing a child to danger. And we would want members of the public to be very careful. Children should not be utilizing fireworks, especially the ones that explode. I think there's, you know, like, you know, there's small little fun snaps and that kind of thing. I mean, that's okay. That's sparklers and
but when we're talking about the one that goes up into the air and explodes and makes the light show, children should not be exposed to this. And under the law, a child is under the age of 18.
So one of the things, because there's a set of safety tips here, right? That's one of them. Never let children handle or light fireworks unsupervised. Light outdoors only, away from buildings, dry grass, vehicles, gas cylinders. Keep a bucket of water or hose nearby, which I think is very important for the next part particularly. Never relight a dud.
Right,
So
because what would happen, Sean, in that case, what happens with duds, just like with a firearm, if you were to pull the trigger and no bullet exits the firearm, you don't check on the bullet, you eject it. Because there's the potential for there to be a slow trigger off of it, and the blast might have been slowed down and then it could explode in your hands. So they're similar with the fireworks. These things, once there's a dot, do not relight it, do not reignite it, throw it away, because it has the potential to have a slow release, and subsequently it could explode in your hand, and we don't want that and anything. What do you have?
I mean, when you say throw it away, I would imagine dousing it with water on some level would be a good first step on throwing it away.
Discard it,
Yeah.
But
So,
I mean, you should have water close by. If you're using fireworks, you should have water close by, like a hose or something to extinguish any potential flames or explosion on the ground that may happen. Because these things are also not. There's no guarantee that it will go up in the air and explode. It could probably fall and explode on the ground. It could be directed into somebody's home. So these are the potential risks when you're using fireworks, that there's potential harm to property and to persons bodily. So you need to take all precautions as necessary. And that's why we don't want children to utilize fireworks.
and that's another thing. I think it seems obvious, right? But the problem is, in the moment, you always have some smart aleck that's like, why so serious? It's just fireworks. It's nothing dangerous. So there's a point here. Never point or throw at people, animals, or buildings. And I think part of it is you can't necessarily be certain what that firework, which is technically an explosive device, would do, right? So to say you know how dangerous it's going to be or that it's safe is kind of foolish.
Yeah, no, there's a great potential for harm to be done. So we've actually seen where the fireworks would have they put it on a stick and it breaks, or it goes in the wrong direction into a person's home and it explodes in the person's home, causing fire. So we've seen that happen already, and we're asking. That's why we ask that you go into an open area and burst your fireworks. Light it, set it off. Don't be too close to it. Don't have any kids around, except to look at. Don't have them handle it. Like
we may be losing. It's things like this. This is going to be real funny, because someday we're going to be conducting an interview with some official, and we're going to get things like this, delays, and then people are going to say, "Oh, look, the AI is glitching," assuming it's a fake interview. I'm sure it's going to happen at some point. I'm sure it's going to happen, and the conspiracy theories are going to happen at some point, because latency doesn't always present the same way. I think we still have SB Arun, but I'm not sure. He might have gotten a phone call. You're still delayed for us, Chris. We may need to ask him to reconnect. I'm not entirely sure what the issue is. Let's take a quick break, and hopefully we'll sort it out and continue the conversation after a very short break here and talk about the WSN, sort out the internet connectivity issues. We'll be right back after this.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Trinidad and Tobago, the trial of the century is back. And you are the jury. After sold-out performances in the UK and Trinidad, Focus Arts Promotions is back in TNT with the explosive, hilarious, and thought-provoking stage play by Alan Charles. Why Didn't I Get Married? It's not good for man to be alone, but what about the women? In Trinidad, Central Bank, Port of Spain, Saturday 12 September, 7 p.m. and Sunday 13 September at 6 p.m. Tickets $225. Available at A&A Pharmacy, Port of Spain, Living Legacy Arima, Maranatha in Sando. For more info, call 768-8214. And for the first time at the Shore Park Complex in Tobago, the day before the holiday, Wednesday 23rd August, 7 p.m. Tickets $200. Available at the Gentleman Barber Spa, Coconut Cafe, and Pablo's Supermarket. For more info in Tobago, call 320-2249. Why Did I Get Married? 7 women, 1 lawsuit. Man shortage in the church? Let the bacchanal begin.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond
want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I would ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Yeah, we're back here on Talking About the WSND Connect Cattle Show. Michael Small. We should have our media ambassador back with us, Mr. Arun.
Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Yeah.
So we were speaking about fireworks got into a home and caused a fire. I'm not sure if you remember where you were at that point.
Yeah, we were speaking about. We were speaking about having ensuring that you have like a bucket of water hose nearby.
Yes.
For any duds or any potential explosion that may harm persons nearby, or fire that might affect properties, because the unpredictable and the potential of the fireworks to enter somebody's home is there. That's why we ask persons to use an open field. You know, so as a family, you go to an open field like a savanna, and you have your fire set off, but you must have some water close by because of the potential risk and harm that it might cause. Any harm to any child would initiate an investigation, and letting persons know this. Any harm to any child, whether it be accidental, not accidental, burns, once a child is harmed, there is going to be an investigation. by the TTPS
right,
and
because,
the Children's Authority.
Because one of the things could be, one, maybe you were negligent. The child was doing things not supposed to be doing, and you knew that the child was doing it. Or, this is the more sinister angle. There might be some people that use fireworks to abuse children, and they say, well, how will they know? You were just playing with it when you wasn't supposed to. Some nefarious thing like that. But regardless, I mean...
That's your mind person.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's your mind person, Sean. Negligence is not an excuse. Negligence is an ingredient to child cruelty. Because you may negligently commit an offense, not understanding the risk and harm you pose, and you took no steps to ensure that it didn't happen.
Right.
So, Sean, there is potential for you will be investigated.
Oh boy. While we wait, hopefully Chris might, the latency issues might clear up. So, I think one of the things I was going to speak to Chris about was the fact that there's always that famous case where a scratch bomb was thrown into someone's car and the lady reached for it to try to throw it out and it exploded in her hand and maimed her. And that is I guess the poster child example. Some people might say maybe you're playing up too much to an extreme case, but that is part of the reasons why the police have these specific regulations in place. People will misuse irresponsibly fireworks and devices because we're not going to give it the full weight or respect of being an explosive. And we don't necessarily realize the dangers that you might unwittingly put people in. Part of the issue is, yes, it explodes safely when it goes up in the air. What if it explodes in a small space with someone inside, like a car? You know, then the shock wave, which is harmless in an open area, might become a little bit more dangerous. If it explodes in your hand, if it explodes in your face, right? The sparks that would dissipate harmlessly in atmosphere, if it explodes in a house, if it explodes on a dry grass field. So one of the things that it's difficult to fully explain is that unless you don't know for sure in certain circumstances what a firework could do, how bad it could get, right? And the firework might go into a situation because you weren't careful with how it was aimed and explode in bad circumstances. That's one of the reasons why they say don't do this near gas. Let me see if I can get the specific. Light outdoors only, away from buildings, dry grass, vehicles, gas cylinders, or anything like that. You might have a can of diesel, kerosene, you know, or some cleaning product that might be flammable, right? You might have just used some cleaning product on your patio, and then you look to light fireworks, and it explodes on the patio, and maybe lights you residue of the product that you just put on your patio, and then that fire will spread. So part of me just thinks, why? Why? I understand it's one thing to have a big fireworks show. If a professional agency set up a fireworks show, maybe a company wanted to do a celebration, or you hire someone to put on fireworks for your wedding, for an important birthday. Maybe a secondary school has some jubilee, right? whatever, diamond, golden, whichever one comes out next to whatever school, right? Some milestone in the life of a school or an organization, right? And you want to celebrate, and which is fine on some level. These are one-off things, but to say that random people just randomly want to light 1 or 2 fireworks randomly, I honestly don't see the point, particularly given the risks. The risk to property, to people's safety, and then of course there's the psychological harm to the elderly, to the mentally impaired, to children, to pets, right? One of the funny things, can't light fireworks in national parks. What does that mean about the savannah? Exactly, is it a national park, is it not? And also, not next to zoos. Savannah's next to the Emperor Valley Zoo. These are some of the things that I think are issues. Noiseless fireworks, we've been talking about it for years now. I don't understand. Why can't we just have it then? But the noiseless fireworks will only help so far with regards to the noise pollution aspect, not with the physical safety aspect. And I think all too often one of the issues is when people light fireworks, they also tend to be time periods where they drink. Which is why I tied it to the death I was speaking about this morning, right? Nothing good ever comes from people who inebriate themselves to the point where you've lost practical measures of control. Nothing good ever comes from it. And not only could technically alcohol be lit on fire under the right circumstances, but yeah, the thing is, with alcohol, you don't know when your judgment is impaired because you're fine, but then slowly but surely it starts to eat away at your self-control. Those with self-control will limit how much they drink because they know that you can't just control this. Once you hop on the tail of the monster that is alcohol, you run the risk of it going out of control. So it's funny. It's funny what we allow to mix. This is why I say if you have like major events that want to have professionals, because then the professionals are providing the service while the celebrants, the celebrating public, guests, invitees, get as hammered as you want within the confines of what is reason for the given situation and practical safety concerns. But you don't have to worry about hammered people lighting off fireworks, which I think is part of the problem, to be honest. But human beings will do what human beings do. And this is one of those things where I don't have an issue if a government decides, you know, the risks are not worth the benefits to society. Because here's the fact of the matter. You want to solve road traffic deaths, you just ban driving, right? Obviously, they're not going to do that, Sean. How are they going to just ban people from driving? Because banning driving would include banning maxi taxis and taxis, potentially even buses, right? You go to the extreme. If no one's driving, then there could be no road traffic fatalities, right? Right? It doesn't make sense to you. But think about it. Why doesn't it make sense to you? Because what you don't realize is society is basically saying we will tolerate a certain number of road traffic deaths so that we could all get to wherever we need to go faster. Our convenience of driving to somewhere trumps the statistical figure of the population on average that dies every year due to road traffic fatalities. Not all of them are drunk drivers. Some of them are the victims of drunk drivers. We're even going so far as to say, yes, statistically speaking, some of us can be the victim of a drunk driver hitting us or a speeding driver hitting us. But we still don't want this thing to be banned. We still don't want this thing to be prevented. We are willing to tolerate a certain level of human pain and suffering to allow the convenience of us having motor vehicles. Humans will do some crazy things when you think about it, when you spell it out certain ways, when you think through the logic of the process and you realize that it doesn't always seem that logical. But for the sake of convenience, we will tolerate certain levels of pain and suffering. But I don't really see the benefit of fireworks, to be honest. Driving, there's an actual economic benefit. It makes us more productive. It allows us to get more things done in a day. Goods and services could reach us faster. And that includes things like medicine. A strong economy means we could import more medicine. We could afford more medicine, right? We could afford better health care. We could afford better educational activities. And if the economy is weakened because we want to go the way of the Amish, then certain things we won't be able to afford. We won't be able to do as easily. Our quality of life would technically drop. And then one could argue that could also lead to pain and suffering and loss of life. You have no such consequence for a lack of fireworks. You have that for lack of driving. And people die on the roads. But the benefits technically do outweigh the costs. Because the stronger, more productive, more profitable economy means we can afford certain things to stave off pain and suffering and death. Fireworks gives us none of these benefits. But the problem is we are so ingrained with, oh gosh, nah. I don't know if we've really had a mature conversation that encompasses a significant amount of the population. So, on one hand, the fact that it's still a thing mentioning silent fireworks, we're still mentioning it. The fact that we haven't gone wholesale only to that already, that implies to me that we're just giving lip service to trying to deal with the noise pollution aspects of fireworks. But look, call me crazy. I don't think it's a good idea to have explosives in the hands of most people. I'm just saying. I stress out trying to remember if I shut off the stove or not when I leave the house sometimes, to make sure I don't, leave something burning in a pan, much less want to deal with people dealing with explosives around me. So, there is that. Let's take the comment quick, because I don't, we have a remark. Okay, we'll take a remark now, and then we'll go into the comment. Caller, you on the line?
Michael Small, good morning to you.
Morning.
Good morning to you. Morning to you, Point Nation. I wanted to get this question to Officer Arun, right?
Yeah, it might be difficult.
And the issue, I was looking at two things. The first part of the argument was the amount and the types of arms and ammunition which has been confiscated and also in the hands of criminals. For the past 20 years, the amount of arms that the police confiscate versus the attempts on the lives of some of our senior public officials, like President, Prime Minister, MP, Minister, Chief Justice, Magistrate, Judge. Because when you listen to the current narrative, right, about the threats on life and people not feeling safe, I noticed some of these politicians just play mass, them and their wives. They'll attend public events. They'll be shopping in it, on the malls. They live in ordinary lives. They're campaigning in the open. Then when I look at the persons who have been killed, let us just exclude the coup. So people like Miss Hassan Ali, not Miss Hassan Ali, sorry, Miss Sita Hal, Officer McNichols, who was killed in the shootout from the prison. The prosecutor who was killed after the Old Year's Night service. Even the dustbin bomber in Port of Spain. Or we could even go back to President Hassan Ali's wife. So my point is this, and this is what I want them to tell me. In relation to the types and the amount of firearms and ammunition, when you look at countries like Mexico and Colombia where they kill politicians, you don't find it that kind of an overreach when these people talking about threats? Because to me, I find they should be living in bunkers and not be seen in the public. I just wanted to hear what he would have thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, this discussion on fireworks was very, very essential, and it was informative. Good program as usual. I will listen. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. One thing, though, we technically have not reached the level of firepower that you might find in Mexico or those Latin American countries where it's gone out of control. I believe Mexico is one of the main ones. And we were close, though. When we had the weapons cache confiscated, then Senior Superintendent Roger Alexander was one of the lead officers. I think Erla was the commissioner during that period. This is the same day that the Deputy Commissioner of Prisons was attacked at his home with a handgun. With a handgun. And if it was something larger than a handgun, an automatic weapon larger than a handgun, things might have been a lot worse. And they got a weapons cache that had 2 high-powered rifles. One was a 50 caliber rifle. I don't want to necessarily spell things out too much, but we are in a catch-22 situation. The violence in places like Mexico has firepower even greater than that. And to the point where it's kind of ridiculous. But our politicians are technically not that secure, to be fair to them. The flip side is what you pointed out. It's funny how there are threats against them. And to me, historically speaking, we had a lot of holes in our security on politicians, in my opinion, which is an amateur opinion. But the fact that you have threats against members of government, and for the most part, there have been multiple threats over the course of multiple state of emergency renewals, and most of the time they go about their day like nothing's wrong. And I find, like you, that's very curious. And to me, that does not look consistent. And there's inconsistencies there. We have Arima on the line. I think this is the second Arima.
Hi, morning.
Morning.
Yeah, morning, Sean. Now, I heard the topic was firebomb, fireworks, and scratch bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know which one more dangerous? The scratch bomb more dangerous. Because sometimes, long time when, you know, the young people used to just take it, come in front of your door, you know, come in front of your door and just throw it up. And we used to see how this thing used to get away, right? And explode, which is like the fire, the fireworks now is different. It ain't that, all of them dangerous, but the scratch bomb, it's more dangerous than the fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
But here my topic really is this morning. You know, Independence Day parade, everybody used to enjoy it in the savannah, inside the savannah. Why is it they had to move it from there, close to the president's house, by the roadside? Why that had to happen? It have an answer. It have an answer to that thing. We will want to know why they move it from inside the savannah where people comfortable, people could stand up and enjoy it. Then move it now by the president's house. Why they do that? Why did that have to happen?
The justification. The justification that I saw, right, was that they would have had to take down the North Stand to have the parade by the grandstand. I don't necessarily know how practical, necessary, how practically necessary that is. But because they didn't want to take down the North Stand, they just moved the parade. I don't know why they couldn't figure out a way to do it with the North Stand up. It is what it is. So what that means for the viewing public, for the bystanders and the like, and the detriment to them, I don't know. But if the experience is a bad viewing experience, well then people will complain, and rightfully so. But I don't know what their plans are for the viewing public, so I can't necessarily say that it is going to be a bad experience for those that want to spectate.
Well, I think for me, that is my suggestion. I think like they're trying to stop the Independence Day parade, and they had to do something like that. So whenever the public and people come to watch it and enjoy it, they will get fed up and say, no, I'm not coming back. So they will have the all clear to stop it. And that is what I figure they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think an argument could also be made that by removing it from the grandstand, they are limiting the members of the public who could spectate. And that could be a way to try to keep the event, keep the public away for the most part. And I don't know if it's because they have security concerns, or if it's just because, like as what you say, they don't really want to put the event on, right? Although there seems to be a lot of they're going through a lot of trouble to make these changes. I'm curious as to what the actual motivation is, to be honest. I'm not sure if we know what it is just yet. Because, Caller, is anything else?
No, nothing else. That is my little thing for this morning, because I was so curious to find out why they did that. And all the time people was comfortable, they enjoying it.
Yeah,
so it can't have a reason they did it.
Yeah.
They did it from there. So that is all this morning.
Thank you.
Until tomorrow again.
Tomorrow, yes.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Yeah, the thing is, there's a part of me that wonders, could you just modify the parade? This is kind of sad, right? Like, is the stage not big enough? I assume the stage is not big enough to handle the parade how they would normally handle it. Could you just modify the parade if you don't want to remove the North Stand? Why does the parade have to be a certain way? Right? They could literally be like a prairie band and march past. And I guess, I don't know, does the president have to inspect the troops? Well, then they could have been in formation next to the stage, somewhere off to the side, and maybe you bring up her SUV and you drive her to inspect. I don't know. Because the thing is, while I do not necessarily agree that temporary structures are automatically a threat to the savannah and the sanctity of not building up upon the savannah, I'm not, you kind of have to give the government some kind of leeway as long as it remains temporary. The moment concrete goes down, we have a problem. We have a big problem. And they need to be very careful about the precedents that they set. Because then it will be it doesn't have to be a park in South. It could be some land that maybe a temple is using or what have you, that all of a sudden some site for some festival, all of a sudden government have use for it when another party comes into power. You could have retaliations, and it could be a very horrible tit for tat if you're not careful. Conservation of green spaces is something for generations, not just an argument to be had by the individuals in the now. So I agree, you put concrete down in the savannah. It's one thing if you want to put a patch of concrete down somewhere by the paddock. But you start to put concrete down on all over the rest of the savannah, we'll have a problem. And obviously I don't think they should wholesale just put cement down on that entire side of the savannah by the grandstand. But some leeway there to modify there, that's fine by me. obviously you can't incrementally grow the amount of paved ground over there either, right? But some leeway should be reasonable. But you have a whole 4/5 or more that is essentially just open field, and it needs to remain open field. Temporary structures I don't necessarily have an issue with, but I think the issue with the arrangement is what the caller pointed out. How is the whole event going to go? And are you compromising the event? Because potentially you're too lazy to think about how to do a parade in a different setup with constraints. So I don't know who is the person that is not innovative enough, not free thinking, out the box thinking enough. But we get what we pay for, right? So one of the things the first caller from Maria spoke about, the threats and the fact that, yeah, we're in a state of emergency, we don't feel like we're in a state of emergency. We have threats against high officials, we don't feel like they're taking the threat seriously, to be honest, right? There is the bomb threat scare because I think there was a second set of bomb threats, right? And the minister said an arrest is imminent. I think there's a couple of things. One, we don't want to see PDOs. That's not going to solve this problem. It's not. It might solve the problem in the short term, yes. Whoever's making these calls might be put behind bars, detained. They can't make any more mischievous bomb threats. It's not going to prevent it happening next year or a couple of years from now or what have you. It's not. So we'll see how it goes. My concern is that this doesn't turn into wanting more powers to deal with what people might say. Because a bomb threat is different to talk that you don't politically like. But we'll see how this goes, right? They do need to be an arrest, not a detention, an arrest with charges so that there will be consequences and not a lawsuit at the end of it where they get a six-figure payout for wrongful arrest. Although in this case, but if you technically don't have evidence to charge, then how can you prove that the person actually made the calls in order to then disprove any claims of malicious prosecution, wrongful arrest, or damages? No one ever accused law enforcement leadership of being good at their job, just saying. Now, we have a comment. Let's see the comment quick before we wrap up today. One of the things, I knew this was going to happen. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't necessarily want to speak about this because I was speaking about racism. And I was speaking about one of the extreme examples of racism. But I knew that someone was going to, once I mentioned it, and the Jews, someone's going to bring up Israel and the Zionists. Now, let's break down this statement on a practical level. It's not going to take long. Good day. Genocide is not what any individual think it is. Genocide is defined in the United Nations Charter as acts committed with the intent to destroy wholly or partially a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Thus, the Israeli Zionists are committing genocide. That is an incomplete statement. You give the definition, and then you say, thus it is. You have not actually shown the event being in line with the definition. Because it is self-evident to you. But that is not how a debate works. Outside of very obvious things on a basic level, like the sky being blue and the grass being green, you cannot just assume that everyone will agree, this is the definition, therefore, by this definition, it is so. No, you then have to say, this is the definition, this is what we observe on the ground, in line with the definition, therefore, based on our observations, which match the definition, it is so. Because here's the thing, based on observations, the actions by the Israelis technically do not match the definition. Because the use of the label genocide is an emotional reaction to a horrific event that has led to the loss of mass casualties. But that is not how you define genocide. More people are dying in Ukraine than in Gaza. For the most part, that is not a genocide. More Russians have died in Ukraine than Palestinians in Gaza. I believe it's something like 30,000 a month. Gaza has had 70,000 casualties total. Now, I'm not sure if it's dead, 30,000 dead, but given the lethality of this war, usually they're more wounded than dead. But in this war, the ratios are very close. I don't think they're quite one-to-one. But in some cases, there are times more deaths than injured because of the nature of drone warfare and high explosives being used to kill someone basically at point-blank range. So you potentially have 20 to 30,000 dead a month. In 6 months, that's like 180,000. The scale, the number of deaths does not make it genocide. The definition does. The intent to destroy, now you have to prove that intent. Because here's the thing, it is not obvious that their intention is to destroy, because if you understood the military capabilities of the Israelis, you would know that if they really wanted to commit genocide and didn't care to cover it up, it would be very obvious. They have very obvious tools to do so, and they wouldn't waste their time doing what they're doing now. Even if they wanted to cover it up, they probably would be doing it different ways. My issue is not, I think they're committing genocide and it's wrong. My thing is that I think militarily what they're doing makes no sense. It's not going to achieve anything that they want to achieve, and it's just causing people to die for no reason. That is two very different perspectives. Just because 70,000 have died, that is not genocide. It is not even 10%. You cannot say the intent to destroy an entire ethnic group is on display when the ratio of casualties, yes, it makes a dent in the population, but in warfare terms, it's not really. For normal, everyday civilians like us, 70,000, that is a big number. For military action, it actually is not. It actually is. It is a big number, but it's not at the same time. Things are relative. The war in Iraq seemed horrific to American civilians, but the actual casualties for what you define as a war was not on a relativistic scale that significant. That's the problem. It's a relativistic scale. It's not that it's insignificant, but by comparison, it is not the most extreme, it is not the worst, it's not something that you need to utilize the most extreme label because it is so far beyond the pale. No, we take it for granted that peace is the norm of man. Wars used to happen all the time to the point where it kept the population of nations down. World War I and World War II essentially wiped out generations of young men in Europe. Russia's demographics have yet to recover from World War I and World War II. The analysis on their manpower shortages includes the consequences of the amount of young men that were taken from their population curve in narrow time periods, and it shows up in every generational cycle. You'll have one part of the cycle where there's a large amount of births, and then it'll dip because there was a lack of men or a lack of children subsequently for that part of the cycle of their population curve. And then it'll smooth back, it'll pop back out and tuck back in again, and so on and so on. Because by that definition, China's committed genocide against China. The Soviet Union committed genocide against all of their ethnic people. The label of genocide is an emotional one used by media and advocates. The statement does technically not prove that genocide, based on the definition provided by the statement, we're not even questioning the veracity of the definition. Nothing was offered to prove that the situation is in line with the definition, therefore proving the situation to truly be on a technical objective level genocide, because it is incomplete. So if you want to wade into a debate on complex issues, you have to offer more than that. That is not enough, because it is not self-evident to me that what you're saying is correct. In part because what you're saying is incomplete, but in part because what you think is self-evident, I disagree with. I view it differently. That doesn't mean that I favor the situation. That doesn't mean that I like what's going on. That doesn't mean that I think there's nothing to see there and that it's fine. And that's all I'll say about that. If you want to disagree with me, that's fine. Don't just say that I'm wrong. This is offering a definition, but without any sort of reasoning to go beyond the definition. It's not that meaningful, and you're still not actually giving me a complete reason as to why you disagree with me. Therefore, I am limited to how I could respond. I was still able to give a response, so it's better than a bare bones nothing statement of just you're wrong, but doesn't actually advance the conversation in any meaningful way. Because you then have to show how the actions of the Israelis show intent and prove that their actions conform to the definition. That onus is on you, it's not on me. You're making the claim, I'm not. It's not my job to do the work for people making claims counter to my claims for them, because I don't necessarily have all of the information that you're using to come to your conclusions. The onus can't be on me. The onus is not on the prosecution to prove the defense's case, or the defense to prove the prosecution's case. That's not how it works. The onus is not on for one debater to prove the point of the other debater. You want to enter into the competition of ideas, into the debate of ideas, the discussion on issues. You have to be able to fully form out your argument. So, we'll probably continue the fireworks conversations maybe one more day. I've lost track on the time. When is the 31st? Next week, Monday. So probably not. So with that said, this would have been our last chance to speak to the ASP. So we thank the TTVS for that message. I know that it's going to fall on deaf ears for some, and others will say they didn't hear it. I understand that. So please, perhaps those of you that saw the episode today or will see the episode on any of the reruns, speak to your family members and dissuade them from being reckless with fireworks this time. It's not worth it. It's not. Right? Why maim yourself or take the risk? And you might think, nothing bad will happen. Yeah, except statistically speaking, it happens to somebody. I don't know about you, but I've gone through my life trying to ensure that I am not one of those dumb statistics. So for the Independence Day, well, I'll see you before then. So until tomorrow, stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Don't forget, it's nice to be nice. If you know someone that maybe says some insensitive things, I know it's not easy, and sometimes you're not actually going to help the situation. As long as you could say to yourself, you did everything you reasonably could. Because if we want to improve our society, part of it is not just expecting someone else to deal with it. Part of it is if we know that somebody is doing nonsense, to try to convince them to stop. We have to be our brother's keeper. It doesn't all have to escalate to a national issue. Racism is one of those things. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for sharing the time with us. Let's tell you what's happening in this edition of the program. Help farmers prepare for